Hey HR managers, I just wanted to take a couple minutes and go through trust and transparency with you. You're going to be learning some more about it this week. I just wanted to kind of go and share some kind of fast facts for you about trust and transparency in the workplace. I wanted to open with this quote by Jack Welch. He's the former CEO of GE. As you guys know, I worked for GE for around 6 years. And Jack Welch is known for really doing a massive change for the culture of General Electric, taking us into really being a global leader in a lot of different industries, and specifically the energy industry. But for him, he said trust happens when leaders are transparent. And so I want to talk to you today about what trust is as an organization, what value does that have, how can we build trust in an organization, and then I also want to talk to you about what transparency is in an organization, specifically in HR, and what are some actions we can do to live out not only trust but also transparency in the workplace. I'll share a couple of stories for me as well, some things that maybe have and have not worked well for me in building trust and transparency in my work experiences, and maybe you'll be able to relate them to some in your story as well. So first of all, let's talk about what is organizational trust. So I'm defining that as the confidence of your workforce in the actions of the company. So it's not so much about what you say or that we have good values on paper, but is the actions that we're doing on a daily basis instilling trust in our workers? Do they feel like they can keep the word, or that leaders are going to keep their word, the organization is going to follow through in the things that they say based on their past actions? Have they done things that are going to build trust or not? So here's just a couple of kind of fast facts for you on how we can really build trust in the workplace. Because honestly, as a business, we're out there, we have goals, we have objectives we're trying to meet, we're trying to make money as a business, right? But if we are going to have a good performing business, we have to be able to have trust as embedded in our culture as an underlying part of that. Because it's been proven that when employees feel safe, they perform better. They want to make sure that that they know what's expected of them, they know how they can be successful, how they can keep their job, how they can rise up in the ranks, and that if they do work, they're going to be recognized or rewarded for that. So those are really important benchmarks for trust, is that employees feel safe, they feel secure, they want to make sure their accomplishments are recognized. And so if we can clearly put down saying, listen, here's what success looks like, and give some benchmarks for success. If we can also make sure that they are being recognized on a regular basis, not just once a year, but maybe meeting with them weekly or bi-weekly for a one-on-one, tell them how they're doing, and also to give constructive feedback. Not everybody is 100% right or 100% successful all the time, but if they can be given constant or constructive feedback on how they can get better. I always try to do with my employees the ABC method. You did great on A, you did great on B, but C could use a little bit of work. And so that's a great way to kind of think about how to build trust in your organizations. You're identifying things that they can do a little bit better, but before that, you're definitely talking about their great successes and all they are bringing to the table. So you want to make sure that you're consistent in both bringing praise, but then also some sort of criticism. You don't want to tell somebody, yep, you're doing great all the time, because if you do, that's going to kind of build a little bit of a lackadaisical nature, and you don't necessarily want that. So you want to make sure you're giving that consistent criticism and praise on a regular basis. And you also want to make sure that when you are taking time to point out their mistakes and also their successes, it's letting employees know that their work is being noticed. And if their work is being noticed, that is hopefully going to mean that they are someone who is on your radar. And that's important for an employee to recognize that, hey, my boss knows who I am, they knows what I do, and they're thinking about me. That's all going to help build a safe environment. Second is, you have to recognize that trust goes both ways. So inevitably, problems come up in the workplace. It can be something work-related, it could be coworker-related, it could be something personal life-related, but you need to make sure that you are approachable as a manager in the workplace and they are going to feel comfortable coming to you with a problem. So when that happens, you need to make sure you need to figure out what can I do to make this a safe space, and then also make it a positive experience so that they're going to want to come back and talk to you again in the future. So that's a really important part as well, is that you need to make sure that you are someone that they view as trustworthy, that they can come and talk to. But in the same point in time, you also need to make sure that you are sharing, you trust that employee as well. Trust goes both ways. So if you are constantly checking in on somebody, checking their work, questioning their decisions on everything, that's definitely something that is going to help erode trust and make the employee feel like they're not trusted. So as an employer, you want to make sure that you're setting really good, clear expectations and then kind of letting the employee go and letting them run with it and giving them an opportunity to kind of live out your trust. Trust goes both ways. Third, you also want to make sure you're building a corporate environment where trust runs rampant. All right, you want to make sure that employees can trust their coworkers and that they're all working together and you have that kind of collaborative environment. That's why it's really important to hire carefully. You want to make sure whoever you're hiring is going to be a great fit. There's a quick study from a Fortune 500 company. They basically recognized when they were going to put a change into place, it would take them 89 weeks to put that change into motion once they first started talking about it. That's almost 2 years. I've worked for a big company, I've been there, and I've seen these kinds of things in action, and it's very, very frustrating for an employee, and it definitely can start to erode trust. So when you're pushing out a change and people know a change is coming but they're not seeing it yet, it's really, really hard for a team to kind of get together, to cooperate, to work together. So we have to be mindful of our timelines of when we're doing changes and how to really give opportunities for teams to cooperate and work together and build trust. And a lot of that can come through the structural setup of even some sort of an organizational change. We also have to recognize that people have a lot of different approaches in the workplace. A lot of teams are going to have different communication styles, different work styles, and that all those are okay, but inevitably friction will come up because people are different and they have different approaches for things. So you just have to kind of be thinking about, how do we kind of, maybe if you work in a cubicle environment, how do we place people together so they have good communication, and how do we collaborate, some sort of camaraderie. When I think about this, I think about an old coworker I had. Her name was Terry. She was an older lady, really great at her job, but she grew up in a generation where literally you were on the phone all day. She would pick up and call, pick up and call, pick up and call. And she wouldn't necessarily send emails, but she was always on the phone, and she was always checking in with somebody. And in an overall quiet office, somebody that had that kind of a mentality where they were on the phone all day checking in, she had good relationships with all of her suppliers, but at the same point in time, her coworkers were not too fond of her because they wanted a nice quiet work environment. And she's, making, 10, 20 phone calls an hour first thing in the morning. And so those kinds of things really kind of created some sort of irks in the relationship. And so eventually we just had to recognize, listen, we like Terry, but we need to think about where she's placed in relation to the rest of the team to help kind of make sure that the way that she works, it's working for her, but it's not working for others, and how we can really help to build that good team camaraderie. Small changes like relocating her away from the team so she could make her calls, or even working with her to say, hey, listen, is this a phone call issue or is this an email issue? Those are all ways that you can really help to build trust within a team. And last, keep in mind, leaders are really setting the tone for the workplace. So whatever it is that you are looking for your team to do, you need to be doing it first. So you have to model that behavior. So make sure that you're showing up on time. You're not playing favorites. You're giving everybody equal attention. When there's a complaint, you're taking the time to look into them, give it its due diligence, resolve things as quickly as possible, and make sure you're transparent, which we're going to talk about in our next video. So you just have to keep in mind that you are setting the tone for the organization as an HR leader, as a manager. And so if you want trust in the workplace, you have to first kind of model it out. So I hope those quick tips are helpful for you. I'm sorry, I have a couple more for you. The last couple that I wanted to share in regards to trust in the workplace are that first impressions matter. So we've talked a little bit about hiring and how important it is to hire the right person for a culture. But once we have hired them, we need to make sure they have a really strong, positive onboarding experience. Because of that onboarding experience, and they don't get that kind of firm foundation of understanding of how the organization works, the culture, the people, and how the team kind of works together, it can impact your turnover. And turnovers cost money. To replace an employee costs around $100,000. So it's very expensive to have an employee that doesn't necessarily have that buy-in. And it can also reduce your engagement, which in turn, if your engagement is reduced, it's also going to reduce your productivity, which is going to impact how much money you make and your goals and objectives. So getting those first impressions right are important. So you want to make sure that new hires are really invested in. You make sure they have a warm welcome, that they know everybody that they're going to be working with, and make sure you're creating opportunities to create kind of social and professional bonds. So I always try to take someone out for a new lunch to kind of get to know them a little bit. Honestly, there's one team that I went in one time, they went out to lunch and they didn't say a word to me. It was my welcome lunch, and I was concerned because the whole team talked to each other, not one concern about me, interest in me at all, and it went on to show that was a very dysfunctional team. So that was one thing that I was kind of concerned about. But you want to make sure the new hires welcome warmly, that they're kind of front and center, and that they're also getting the opportunity to kind of see how the team works. Also, when somebody starts on a team, they're gonna have questions, right? They're trying to get up to speed in the job, understand how it works. You want to make sure that that you have an environment where questions are welcomed, that employees are encouraged to come with questions. There's a constant open door policy. Encourage them to be inquisitive. And also recognize they may look at things from a certain angle that maybe you, having been in the job for a long time, may have missed. I can share a couple of stories of don't do's for you. When I first got my job, I was given maybe 5 minutes of instruction. This was years ago, early in my career. And I wasn't really necessarily given the tools I needed to be able to do my job properly. And I tried to go to the girl who was supposed to be mentoring me with questions, and she basically said, I don't have time for your questions, write them all down, and then we'll take a half hour at the end of the day. And so literally I was losing a ton of time every day because I couldn't necessarily do my job, answer the questions, and she made herself unavailable the entire time. She did whatever she could to kind of block me or slow me down. I also at one point had a manager, and a manager, I came to him and I said, hey, listen, I said, I've done some great things in my old job that I think would be really beneficial in our IT systems. I think it could really help save us and cut down a lot of our time. And he basically said, I don't want to hear about it. That's not what you were hired to do. Go back and do your job. Long story short. And guess what? 2 years later, they started doing exactly the changes that I wanted to do, and they did it on a much larger and more expensive scale than the small little changes that I was hoping to make. And so it really kind of put a bad taste in my mouth for that team, for that manager, and it really can definitely impact you. So you want to make sure that people have that open air environment, that you're valuing their opinions when they come. It's a great way to kind of make an employee feel welcome or included. I can definitely share another experience as a positive one as well. I went in and I told my manager, I said, hey, listen, I really would like to be able to figure out what it is we can do to get some bottlenecks out of our system. We had a couple processes that things would get stuck in for like 3 days, and it could slow down productivity in the shop. And I said, hey, listen, if we were to change this process here, we could get around these bottlenecks. He said, yes, go do it. And we ended up being able to save a ton of time in the shop, and also being able to get a lot more productivity through the office as well. So there's pros and cons to it, but make sure, again, that employees feel like they can come to you and you're going to take whatever they say and run with it. And then last thing is, as a manager, HR manager, don't just set somebody up and then let them go. As somebody's adjusting to their new role, they're going to have different phases of settling in. So you want to make sure that you're taking time to ask them how things are going. Really take an interest in them. And I would encourage you not just to make this a weekly meeting in the office, but take them out for a cup of coffee. Really take time on the personal side to say how this new job is adjusting to them. Not only just getting their tasks done throughout the day, but how they're settling in personally. I think it's a great way to kind of being able to head off problems that could lead to reduced engagement or reduced turnover as well. And then last, it's all part of really making an investment in your employee. If your employees feel invested in, they're going to trust you. If you don't necessarily feel like you're being invested in, employees can be stagnant. They may not be trying as much or engaged as much as they're used to. So the more you're kind of keeping a tab on your employee, challenging them to do a little bit better, recognizing their successes, the more that you can really continue them to grow. And that's going to help them go on to bigger and better roles, bigger and better things in their career, so they can go on and accomplish great things. So all those are my hopes and plans for you as a student, as well as I'm trying to push you on to do great things. You've been doing a fantastic job, but that's a little bit about trust in the workplace. Go ahead and check out the second video on transparency.